Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we are strapping in for, well, a really intense and high-stakes analysis of a major moment in Pakistan's internal political landscape.
The big one.
Yeah. Our sources are basically two opposing narratives. First, a recent, very powerful press conference by the military's chief spokesperson, the DG ISPR.
And second, the immediate, and I mean fierce, journalistic rebuttal that came right after it.
Exactly. This is more than just a standard briefing. It feels like a public airing of a deep fracture at the very highest levels of state power.
That's right. We're going to cover defense strategy, this new Chief of Defense Forces headquarters. But then it pivots, and it pivots hard.
It does.
Straight into this extremely public, very personalized conflict over what national security even is. What are the political boundaries and the character of modern opposition?
It's a roadmap, really. It shows you where power is and what gets defined as a threat. Okay, so let's unpack this. We'll start with the official news, the structural stuff, before we dive headfirst into the real firestorm.
Let's do it.
So the first key announcement from the DG-ISPR's briefing was the formation of the Chief of Defense Forces headquarters, the CDF headquarters.
Right.
On the surface, that sounds like a pretty standard military restructuring. What was the core rationale they gave for this massive shift?
Well, the way the DG-ISPR framed it, this was a necessary, almost foundational requirement, something that's been long awaited.
Okay.
And if you strip away all the dense military jargon, the requisite synergy, jointness, efficacy, what they're really saying is they need to update the entire org chart.
To make it faster?
To make the military instantly responsive and highly coordinated. And they emphasize, look, Pakistan isn't alone in this. Almost 70 other countries have similar synergistic headquarters.
But the timing is everything. Why push for this now beyond just, internal efficiency?
Because the nature of war has changed, fundamentally.
How so?
The briefing stressed that future wars are going to be shorter, sharper, and much more violent. And crucially, they won't just be fought on land, sea, and air anymore.
Right, it's multi-domain.
Exactly. You're talking about space, cyber, the informational domain, intelligence operations. The CDF headquarters is designed to make sure that when a conflict ticks off, all those pieces act as one single joint unit instantly.
It's a clear signal that they see information warfare and space dominance as just as critical as tanks and fighter jets.
Absolutely. A very clear vision for external defense.
But then right after this discussion of defense, the DG ISPR makes this extraordinarily sharp pivot. He turns to a security threat that is internal.
And this is where it gets really intense.
Yeah, the rhetorical violence begins. What was the profile of this alleged threat?
It was incredibly personalized and political. The language was just uncompromising. He talked about a delusional mindset and delusional person who is captive of his own self.
The direct psychological profile?
Yes, explicitly calling the individual narcissistic. The core of it was that this person's desires, his frustrations, his self, are seen as being placed above the state of Pakistan, the Riyasat-e Pakistan.
And that's the crux of it, isn't it? That's the strategic move. Elevating a political disagreement, the personality of an opponent, to the level of essentially state treason.
Absolutely. Defining it as an existential national security threat. The narrative being pushed by this person, according to the military, has completely crossed the line from politics into something else.
Right. The moment a DG ISPR gives this much airtime to one politician, it signals that institutionally they see this person as their #1 problem.
Without a doubt.
And in countering this, the military also pushed back really hard on the idea that they're just some elite class.
They did. The DG ISPR made a strong statement about the character of the armed forces. He insisted they don't represent any single ethnicity or linguistic group, or religious or political thought.
And where do they come from?
He stressed that their people are drawn from the middle, lower middle, and poor classes, specifically not the elite. It was a clear attempt to dismantle that counter-narrative that the military is divorced from the people.
So the message is, we are you.
Basically, once they wear the uniform, they put everything aside and die for the integrity of Pakistan.
So when you look at the source, the claims weren't just, vague criticisms. They got very specific about undermining the nation's core survival mechanisms.
Oh, very specific. They focus heavily on actions designed to trigger an economic and civil collapse.
Like what?
Well, claims of encouraging people to stop sending remittances home, which would cause a national financial default. Also, trying to write a letter to the IMF to block a bailout agreement.
Again, aiming for default.
Exactly. And then encouraging civil disobedience, like telling people not to pay their electricity bills, all to cause chaos, or what they called intishar.
The strategic weight of those claims is just huge. By focusing on the IMF letter and remittances, the military is essentially saying this internal political fight is the same as external economic warfare.
Precisely. And they linked this directly to targeting the military leadership itself. Specifically, the architects of the Maraka Ihak victory, this successful counterterrorism campaign, presenting them as enemies. The DG-ISPR asked, who in Pakistan would want this? Default in chaos. He said it could only be guided from the outside.
And that leads straight into the collusion claims. He didn't just hint at it, he named a foreign capital.
Yes. He detailed a narrative that he said was working in deep collusion with external actors, and the briefing explicitly named someone sitting in Delhi.
That's an extraordinary claim for a military spokesperson to make in a domestic political context.
It's a massive escalation. It immediately ties your political opposition to your main geopolitical rival. The line between dissent and external threat is just erased.
And they even broke down how this narrative is supposedly spread.
They did. They laid out this whole sequence of amplifications suggesting a coordinated campaign. It allegedly starts on the main social media accounts tied to the individual or party.
Okay.
Then that message is picked up immediately by social media in India. Then Indian media outlets, he named Republic TV, India Today, NDTV, and then it moves to Afghan media.
So a whole ecosystem.
A whole ecosystem. And he said it includes Benami accounts, anonymous troll accounts, often run from the diaspora, whose only job is to amplify this anti-state message. He insisted it wasn't a coincidence. It was a system.
A system with a lot of organization behind it.
And after all that, the briefing moves to the legal side, trying to give a constitutional defense for their position.
So what were the legal red lines they cited? I know they mentioned fundamental rights, but with limits.
Exactly. They cited Article 17, freedom of association. It's guaranteed, but it's subject to reasonable restrictions, specifically anything against the security and integrity of the state.
And freedom of expression.
Same thing, Article 19. It's allowed, but the law says it can't be used against the security, integrity, or defense of Pakistan. The argument is clear. Inciting default or colluding with foreign adversaries falls squarely in that prohibited zone.
Beyond the law, though, the DG-ISPR delivered some incredibly sharp, almost behavioral criticisms. What was the most historically charged one?
Oh, definitely the accusation that the person is heavily impressed by and frequently quotes Sheikh Mujibur Rahman.
For our listeners, Mujib was the leader whose political victory led to the 1971 breakup of Pakistan and the creation of Bangladesh.
Exactly. So invoking his name is like accusing someone of leading the nation towards a second fracture. It's designed to trigger a primal fear of national collapse.
Even though the DG-ISPR called him a non-traitor?
The comparison itself is the point. It's deeply provocative.
And they also criticized what they called a comic obsession with the military's internal affairs.
Right. An obsession with promotions, rumored vice chiefs, why the CDF notification was delayed. He argued this was all a deflection from real issues like terrorism, the economy, or the threat from India.
And they also leveled that charge that for this politician, democracy just means being in power, and military rule, amriyat, means being out of power.
A very direct accusation.
So if political dissent crosses this legal line, as the military argues, what does that mean for the state's biggest security challenge? Counterterrorism in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, or KPD.
This is where political criticism becomes a direct policy attack. The DG-ISPR accused the Sikh mind of advocating for dialogue or even appeasement with the Kawari.
And Kawari is a very loaded term.
It's a highly charged term. Historically, it means apostates or rebels. It's used here to paint the terrorists as being fundamentally outside the bounds of society and religion.
So the implication is that anyone arguing for dialogue is compromising the state's core security principles.
Yes. And the military pushed back hard. They asked, is appeasement a security policy? Is Pakistan's security decided in Kabul or Delhi?
Wow.
And then they linked this alleged appeasement policy to a local terror crime nexus.
What does that involve?
Serious organized crime, drug trafficking, non-custom paid vehicles, kidnapping for ransom, illegal mining. They claim terrorists often act as a protection force for all this illegal activity, sometimes under political patronage.
And that ties it directly back to the political party's governance record in KP, where they've been in power for over a decade.
That's the strategic move. The DG-ISPR said that focusing the whole national narrative on security, like that inflammatory claim, that terrorism is behind the uniform, is just a successful deflection.
A deflection from what?
From long-standing government's failures in KP, he listed serious problems in education, health, corruption, and law and order that are still unresolved.
And what about the National Action Plan, the NAP? What was the update there?
The briefing noted that the kinetic side of it, the intelligence-based operations, or IBOs, is incredibly strong. Over 13,000 operations this year alone.
That's a huge number.
It's the most intense year in a decade. But he said the non-kinetic parts of the NAP are severely lacking, things that need provincial action.
Like strengthening counterterrorism courts.
Right, or dealing with illegal spectrums, or denotifying Afghan refugee camps. All things the military suggests are just not happening.
So the sheer intensity of that message was met with, as you said, immediate and fiery pushback. We have this source from a prominent journalist. How did they interpret this public move?
They saw it as a definitive signal, the start of a new era.
An era of what?
An era where the military leadership has explicitly decided to crush or suppress the former prime minister and his party. Completely.
Wow.
They argued it was the biggest proof yet of the Army's overt interference in politics and a complete violation of the oath by the DG ISPR himself. The reading was that the former PM is now the establishment's single biggest problem.
Okay, so let's get into the specific rebuttals. They challenged that historical comparison to Mujibur Rahman.
They did. The journalist conceded that Mujib might have been a criminal, but then countered that the bigger criminal in the 1971 separation was actually General Yahya Khan.
Citing the Hamadur Rahman Commission report.
Citing the report, yes. Which is a powerful move to shift the historical blame for the nation's breakup right back onto the military establishment.
And the very sensitive claim of collusion with Delhi. What about that?
Dismissed. Dismissed as a standard, predictable tactic. The journalist argued that whenever anyone stands up to the military establishment, they immediately get connected to India or, in the past, Israel.
So, a default attack mechanism.
Exactly. A way to shut down dissent by questioning your opponent's patriotism.
They also fiercely defended the politician against the idea that he was timid with India. That claim he would have gone with a begging bowl, a kashkol, during a war.
That was rejected outright. The journalist cited earlier reports suggesting the former army chief was actually the one who was hesitant and that the former PM had to insist on a retaliatory response.
So a complete counter-narrative, painting the politician as the more resolute one.
Exactly. And finally, the journalist took specific offense to the DG ISPR's rhetorical question to the politician. Who are you?
Yeah, that's a sharp line.
They called it arrogant. The point was simple. This person is the country's most popular leader. He served as prime minister. To ask, who are you, is seen as challenging the will of the people.
It's a fundamental challenge to his mandate.
Yes. And they also criticized the implication that only people who send their sons into the military are true patriots, calling it insulting to the 250 million Pakistanis whose sons become engineers and doctors and businessmen.
This whole deep dive just lays bare this severe fracture in the country's information ecosystem. You have the military operating in this open forum with unprecedented clarity and rhetorical force.
And receiving immediate, equally strong pushback. The sources reveal this extraordinary moment where political opposition is being framed as economic treason, historical revisionism, and geopolitical collusion all at once.
And to wrap this up, the DG ISPR repeatedly stressed a crucial point, that the state, the Riyasat, is larger, wiser, and supreme, and that the state or the government makes the final call on political action, like banning a party.
And this is the core contradiction we'll leave you with. Given the DG ISPR said the state is supreme and the military is just one institution of that state, how does that official separation of power square with the military providing such explicit, high-stakes political commentary and demanding political action in public?
What does that tension suggest about where the civilian government's actual authority lies in a crisis? Something for you to ponder as this high-stakes debate continues to shape the region.